fire Jerome Powell, and what is that going to do to interest rates in the U.S. housing market in 2025? I'm going to answer that question in this video, but first I'm going to show you all some big price cuts I am now finding on the U.S. housing market. And the big thing I'm seeing here south of Atlanta is a lot of houses with two handles on them. And what I mean by two handles is less than $300,000. You know, I'm seeing houses between 220 grand, 280 grand on the market. In some cases, folks, I'm seeing 4-bed, 3-bath, 2,400 square foot homes listed for 260 grand. And this is a huge change. This was not happening a year ago. This was not happening 2 years ago, but it's happening now. And a big reason why we're starting to see these cheaper prices in the market now in July of 2025 is because of the investors. The investors are selling and they're trying to get out of the market in some cases. But I want to first start by talking about a listing that I just went to about 10 minutes ago.
Okay. I've you know never heard of this channel, but I saw it pop up on my feed, and I wanted to give my reaction to it, mainly because it's in Atlanta. And for those of you who've been watching my channel, know that I recently relocated to the area. Um, I don't live in Atlanta. I live just outside of it, actually, and but I work inside of Atlanta. But having said that, I'm got my finger on the pulse here. Not to say I know all things Atlanta, because I don't. To be honest, I've only been here for about a year and a half now. So I'm still learning the ropes and doing all that stuff. But I've been in the industry. I work in the industry here in Atlanta. And some of this, what he's saying, isn't totally accurate, in my opinion. Yes, you're going to see homes south of the airport. That's a area that is up and coming, I'd say. It's not like, once you go up north from the airport, a little more expensive because it's better school districts, all that good stuff, right? The normal suspects, school districts, you know, uh, but that's really the biggest driver, honestly. But, sometimes you got to really pay attention to what people are saying, because even myself included, we're all just guys on internet trying to hustle in these YouTube streets. But what he's saying is he's seeing things with a two handle, and it's because investors are looking to get out. Well, that's not entirely true. I think what people is happening is that they are realizing that they can't get the wish pricing anymore. Is Atlanta saturated with investors? Yes, it is, 100%. But even those investors are realizing that you can't get the pricings that you were able to get even 2 years ago, just because interest rates are higher and they're not coming down. And so people can't afford to buy a house at that same price. Keep this in mind: when interest rates are higher, prices go down, right? Because you had to meet people where they're at. And the same is true in reverse. When interest rates go down, home prices go up, which is why people were able to get, huge pieces of property back when it was 2020, at 3%. Why wouldn't you? It's cheap money, cheap debt, and you can buy a much more house. Well, now people are having to really, sellers in particular, this is not a good time to list your house, but sellers in particular are having to, you know, back off on their price a little bit. So that's really the main driver. I don't think there's a fire sale, meaning like people just have to sell to get out of it. I don't think that's true here, but let's continue on. Let's see what he says.
This listing, everyone, is owned by Blackstone. And Blackstone, a subordinate entity of Blackstone, bought this property for $510,000 in 2022. Do you know what they have it now listed on the market for, everyone? $405,000. So literally, the Blackstone entity has cut the price $105,000 below what they bought it for. Now, this is a 6-bed, 4-bath house, 4,200 square feet, currently now listed for $97 a foot. Unbelievable, folks. They've cut the price.
Again, this just goes back to people realizing that wish pricing is not a thing. If you bought a house during that time, chances are interest rates were much lower. And so you were able to buy at a higher rate. And Blackstone is not, they can afford to take a loss on this money. I mean, it's not going to hurt them one bit.
Over 100 grand. And I walked around the neighborhood. It was a nice neighborhood. And in that neighborhood, you can buy what's essentially a mansion for $97 a square foot that was built in the
Mm,
mid 2000s
okay.
that looks in livable condition. There's another house not too far from here, everyone, that I also found. It's a 4-bed, 3-bath, 2,400 square feet, on the market for $265,000 or $112 a foot. I also visited this house. It was in a nice neighborhood. And again, it's an investor selling. It's one of the biggest investors in the US. However, the question is, are we going to continue to see this downward momentum in prices, or is Trump going to fire Jerome Powell? And are we going to get a new Fed chair who cuts interest rates? And is that going to reignite the market? Is that going to reignite home price growth? Because this has now been in the news a lot the last couple of weeks, especially this week. The rumor is Trump is considering firing Powell, though he says it's unlikely. We don't really know. However, we do know that Trump wants Powell to cut interest rates significantly. And so let's run through that, everyone, because I think you guys need to understand the potential outcomes of this scenario. What if we have a new Fed chair who cuts rates down to 2%, from 4.5% down to 2%? What would that do to the housing market? Well, the first answer that comes to mind is, oh, well, it would cause home buyer demand to go up. There'd be a flurry of buyers in the market, is what I think a lot of people think, is that if the Fed were to just cut interest rates aggressively, there'd be a lot of buyers. Because if you were to cut interest rates, say from 4.5 to 2%, that would theoretically lower the mortgage rate by maybe a similar amount, and that would make borrowing costs cheaper, potentially bring mortgage rates back down to say 4.5 or 4%. Maybe that would cause buyers to come back in. And
Okay. Couple things. And I don't know why news outlets and everyone's running with this narrative. It's almost like they're gaslighting the American people. Let me be clear. Just you guys gotta take some time. And I think if you haven't already, go follow and subscribe to the Uneducated Economist. I think he does a brilliant job of breaking down how the FOMC works. Um that you need to understand how monetary policy works. Jerome Powell, he's getting piled on right now because people think he has a magic wand where he can just go and flip a switch and cut interest rates. Not how it works. Typically, sorry, fighting off a sneeze here. Typically, the committee has about 12 voting members. Jerome Powell is one of them. He is the spokesperson, the, talking head that represents the entire committee. He doesn't have any single power to just cut interest rates. That they all vote on that. Whatever they decide on, he's the one that goes out and tells the public and executes like, hey, here's what the vote was. It's not one person. You got to understand that. The FOMC is made up of 12 individuals who decide monetary policy. Even if Trump got in someone that wants to go in and slash rates, doesn't work like that. You still have to have everyone unanimously to vote on that. So this idea that Jerome Powell, you can just get out and slash him and slash at 2%, like this is why again you got to really watch what people are saying because, and I don't think there's any harm here. I just think people are done enough research. 12 members to take a vote whether they want to slash rates or not. Jerome Powell is the face of that committee, and he's the one that carries it out. So get rid of that false narrative. And you hear people saying that even Trump, you know, he's got to cut. He's got to cut. Well, it's not a single vote that can allow you to do that. It's a collection of people. It's 12 people. They know this. The government people know this. It almost feels like they were just gaslighting the American people. And I don't know why that's so hard. If don't take my word for it, go search it, put it in chat GPT. How many members are on the FOMC board? And you'll see it'll tell you. I'm not making this stuff up. And then it's frustrating to see like NBC, CNN, all of these guys saying cut, cut, cut. Jerome Powell can cut rates. He's not cutting. He's not cutting. Well, it's more than just one person. They don't give that much power to one guy. So anyway, let's continue.
I think maybe that's the outcome that Trump and his team probably wants, right? By lowering interest rates, they want to rejuvenate demand in the housing market because homebuyer demand's literally at the lowest level that it's been at in 30 years. Pending home sales are at close to a 30-year low. Mortgage applications are at close to a 30-year low. Existing home sales are down 25% from normal. Even builder sales are now sluggish again. And this low home buyer demand environment is causing issues for the economy, right? It means fewer people are moving, fewer people are buying furniture, fewer people are going to Home Depot. There's less of a demand for commodities. So I think the Trump administration wants to reinvigorate the housing market. They want to also pay less interest on the debt. But the implicit assumption there is that the Fed cutting interest rates will lower borrowing costs for consumers. And I'm not so sure that's the case, everyone. Because if the Fed were to just cut rates from 4.5 to 2%, it's very possible that long-term bond yields don't go down as much as people would think. It's very possible maybe that the bond market would not like that action by the Federal Reserve, and that long-term interest rates might actually even go up in such a scenario. In fact, even today, earlier when there was the report that Trump might fire Powell, long-term bond yields spiked. They actually went up. The interest rates went up on the long end of the curve with the potential news that Powell was going to be fired, suggesting that bond market participants don't like the idea of just firing the Fed chair and putting someone in there who's going to cut interest rates closer to zero. And you can actually tell,
It's
folks,
not
this is a
how it
pretty
works.
nice home builder community I'm walking around in right now. Has some nice trees, actually has some green. Folks, often you don't see trees and green very often in home builder communities, but in this one, they do have some trees. They do have some landscaping, which actually makes a huge difference. But we need to keep talking about these investors for a second, everyone, because I actually think you guys out there as home buyers and potentially new investors, you might be able to make some money off the exodus from the current investors from the market. Because I just keep seeing huge, huge price cuts from a lot of these Wall Street institutional investors.
All right, I do think this is a market where you can buy and actually do very well. I will agree with him on that. But again, the FOMC has 12 voting members. Jerome Powell and whoever's after him and whoever will be after the next, they don't have the power to just get in there and slash rates because the president wants to. It's not how it works. And that's not how monetary policy works at all. So please be careful out here. There's a lot of just misinformation. And I don't think there's, again, no malintent or anything like that. I just think people are running with narratives because you hear it on mainstream media. So please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. And I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.